Hi everybody, welcome back to the Astro Learner channel. If you ask a spiritual person or a guru how to raise your frequency, they'll probably give you like a mainstream generic answer. And there are countless books out on this subject. They'll say things and you'll learn things like stay positive, cultivate healthy habits, mindfulness, practice gratitude, eat nutritious, exercise, walk in nature, meditate, listen to music, etc., etc. All of these things are wonderful and true, and I could do a video on all of them because they're fantastic, okay? But I'm going to take this subject a bit deeper. People ask me all the time, how do you raise your frequency? They want me to do a video on it, so here it is. And I think it came out fantastic. So they asked me, how to raise your frequency as if it was a method or a routine or a spiritual achievement. And as if frequency was something earned through effort or granted by permission. But this question already reveals the misunderstanding. High frequency is not something you add. It's something that remains. You are already a high frequency being. It's just a matter of coherence to experience being who you are. Yazzie addressed this repeatedly, often with a little frustration at how the concept had been distorted. She says, you do not raise your vibration, you just stop creating contradictions within yourself. So this is not metaphorical, it's structural. Athena explained frequency not as a spiritual ladder, but as the degree of coherence within a consciousness system. It's the alignment between identity, beliefs, emotions, thoughts, and actions. When these elements point in the same direction, frequency stabilizes at a higher state. When they contradict one another, frequency collapses automatically. Athena says that frequency is the mathematical result of coherence. It's not a moral value and it's not a reward. This alone dismantles most spiritual teachings on the subject. So, identity comes before experience. One of Athena's most consistent teachings is that identity precedes perception, not the other way around. Humans are taught that reality happens first, and then identity forms in response. Athena reverses this entirely. She says, you do not experience reality and then define who you are. Who you are defines your experiences. Okay? This has direct consequences for frequency. If a person defines themselves as powerless, attacked, trapped, inferior, or dependent, their frequency will reflect that definition, regardless of how much they meditate, fast, chant, or visualize light. No technique can override who you are. Okay? This is why Yazzie was openly critical of what she calls performance spirituality. You cannot pretend coherence. The system does not respond to pretending. So, raising frequency begins not with positivity, but with self-definition. Who do you believe you are when no one is watching? Who are you when fear is triggered? Who are you when comfort and truth are in conflict? Until who you are is clarified, then frequency cannot stabilize. All right, let that sink in for just a second. Let's get into the cost of internal contradiction. Yazzie spoke often about internal contradiction as the primary cause for low frequency states. Thinking one thing, feeling another, and acting against both fractures consciousness and into competing vectors. Okay? Each contradiction creates energetic interference, like overlapping signals that cancel each other out. Yazzie also says that most humans are tired not because they do too much, but because they contradict themselves all day long. Internal contradiction. Okay? And this contradiction can take many forms. Like saying you value truth but avoiding it to preserve comfort. Claiming sovereignty but waiting to be saved. You know, calling yourself aware but ignoring your intuition. How about acting loving while suppressing resentment? Each one of these things causes and creates fragmentation. Okay? Athena was really precise about this. She says that when thought, emotion, and action are not aligned, energy is consumed, maintaining the conflict. So low frequency is not punishment, it's inefficiency. Now, let's talk about emotional processing versus emotional suppression. One of the most misunderstood teachings from Yazzie is her stance on emotions. She didn't advocate, per se for like positivity and like gratitude loops or emotional bypassing. Okay? She said, an emotion you do not understand will control your perception. Think about that for a second. Someone in the live chat recently asked me how the regressives are manipulating our subconscious mind in order to lower our frequency. So check this out. Unprocessed emotions remain active in the subconscious, constantly drawing attention and distorting interpretation. This lowers frequency not because emotions are negative, but because they occupy energy without resolution. Okay? Is all this stuff starting to make sense? Suppressing anger does not remove it. Suppressing fear does not dissolve it. Suppressing grief does not heal it. Understanding does. All right? Yazzie said that once an emotion is understood, it stops consuming energy. Okay? And if you guys want to have lucid dreams, you need energy. You need to be efficient with your energy. The reason why people aren't lucid dreaming is because they're inefficient with their energy. Okay? So, this is why forced positivity creates incoherence. Claiming to be high frequency while ignoring unresolved emotions creates a split identity. One part performing, the other part bleeding energy in the background. Okay, clarity raises frequency. Pretending does not. Another major factor in frequency stability is attention. Okay? Both Athena and Yazzie emphasize that consciousness is not a substance. It is focus. Where attention goes, energy flows. Modern human environments are designed to fragment attention. You have your constant notifications, the emotional manipulation, and endless information streams and artificial urgency. Okay? A distracted mind has less energy available. Attention divided is energy divided. This fragmentation weakens identity. When attention is scattered, perception becomes shallow. When perception is shallow, frequency drops. So get this. Depth is a stabilizer. Okay? Deep conversations, deep focus, deep creation, deep silence. Yazzie contrasted this sharply with compulsive consumption. See, consumption without creation weakens identity. Okay? Creation reinforces identity. Creation is not about art alone, it's any act where consciousness moves into form through intention. Writing, building, designing, solving, teaching, expressing. Creation reinforces identity because it proves authorship. It reminds the being, I cause effects. Creation is evidence of self, okay? Consumption alone, especially passive consumption, erodes this sense. Without creation, identity becomes reactive, defined by external input. Stable frequency states are almost always accompanied by creative output, even in subtle forms. All right, now let's talk about nature as a coherence field. Natural environments are high frequency zones because they are self-regulating systems without artificial feedback loops. There's no attention harvesting, no psychological manipulation, no electromagnetic chaos layered with intent. Okay? Natural environments do not demand fragmentation of identity. This is why clarity often returns when you're in the forests, in the mountains, in open fields, and near water. Not because nature is just mystical, but because it does not interfere. It does not interfere with your coherence, okay? Yazzie once said, nature does not lie to you, okay? All right, so now let's talk about what collapses frequency. Because if coherence raises frequency, then incoherence collapses it. One of the most destabilizing identities is the victim identity. Okay, this does not deny harm, trauma, or injustice. It addresses identification. Responsibility does not mean guilt. It means authorship of perception, responsibility of perception. As long as a being defines itself primarily by what was done to it, frequency cannot stabilize, okay? As long as you're having a deterministic mindset, frequency cannot stabilize, all right? The identity remains anchored in reaction, not authorship. Closely tied to this is outsourcing power, waiting for saviors, whether they're human, spiritual, extraterrestrial, it creates dependency. And Yazzie was unequivocal about this. She says that no external being can do your inner work for you. And I think we can all agree to that. Any system that positions itself as the source of your elevation removes your sovereignty by design. Fear-based belief systems also collapse frequency, not because fear exists, but because of prolonged identification with fear. Okay? So basically, fear is not low frequency. Staying there is. Feeding it is. Agreeing with it is. Okay? The body is not separate from consciousness. It's the interface through which perception stabilizes. All right, so high processed foods, chemical overload, sleep disruption, and constant stimulation interfere with neurological coherence. These are things that directly affect frequency stability. Biology and consciousness are one system from different angles. Okay, this is not about purity, it's about signal clarity. Perhaps one of the, Yazzie's most important clarifications was about intuition. She rejected the idea that intuition is emotional or vague. She says that intuition is not emotion. It's data. Okay? Ignoring intuition repeatedly erodes self-trust. Without self-trust, identity fragments. Without identity, coherency fails. Okay? I want to say that again. Ignoring intuition repeatedly erodes self-trust. This is super important. Ignoring intuition repeatedly erodes self-trust. Without self-trust, identity fragments. Without identity, coherence fails. So every time intuition is overridden for comfort or belonging or fear, internal authority weakens. Okay. When everything unnecessary is perceptually removed through understanding, what remains is your high frequency. I'm going to say that again too, okay? When everything unnecessary is perceptually removed through understanding, what remains is your high frequency. You are now clear. By understanding and listening to this message, you're getting coherence. You're gaining coherence, okay? You are now clear. When identity is clear, frequency stabilizes by itself. So you should start feeling more like yourself right now. Just by listening to this and understanding how it all works and how frequency, quote unquote, raises, or how your coherence of frequency in your field, is established, you should start feeling more like yourself, right? Because it's clarifying your identity. Okay? This is why it's so important to know who you are. And when you know who you are, there's no need for ascension. There's absolutely no need for it when you know who you are. There's no ritual that replaces honesty, no technique that overrides coherence, no external force that grants what must be assumed. You are already what you are trying to become. You just perceive it, okay? Frequency is not achieved. It's revealed. And who you are and who you are becoming is revealed. When contradiction ends, clarity remains, okay? And clarity by its nature resonates. Well, I hope that this message resonated with you. I thank you all if you made it this far. I'm doing my videos a bit longer these days. So yeah, it's a mouthful for me, but super good information. And I encourage you to listen to this video over and over again. Really get it in. Let it settle in. Think about it. Meditate on it. Okay? Stay fearless, stay sovereign, and stay limitless. This is Astral Irma, and I'll see you in the next video.